Welcome to SoulShift, where grounded science meets soulful transformation, and where real conversations spark real change. Whether it's your first time tuning in or you're part of our growing community, thank you for being here. I'm Morgenstern Shin, joined by my amazing co-hosts, Mindy Gorman-Plutzer and Allie Anderson. And together we love exploring the intersection of mind, body, and soul through the lens of healing, consciousness, and connection. Today, we're talking about something that's been coming up a lot lately in our modern world, what it really means to live life in 5D, or in a higher state of consciousness. We're thrilled to welcome Delphine Channels, a transformative coach, speaker, and founder of Harmoneum. Harmoneum is an online sanctuary for higher consciousness that blends daily spiritual practice, community connection, and expert guidance. Delphine is also the creator and host of Delphine Circles, a video podcast series featuring transformative conversations for thought leaders, innovators, and cultural influencers. Known for her ability to bridge mystical wisdom and plain-spoke guidance, Delphine empowers people not only to access higher states, but to live there, creating ripples of positive change in their own lives and in the world. Delphine blends science, spirituality, and frequency work to help people shift from 3D living, where life can really feel effortful and a bit of disconnection, to 5D living, where there's a state of flow, of harmony, and deep connection with all that is.
Welcome to SoulShift, where modern science, ancient wisdom, and real life come alive.
SoulShift is your weekly dose of inspiration and a reminder that meaningful change can be both gentle and powerful.
Together, we'll unlock practical tools, share conversations that spark something beautiful, and celebrate every facet of your incredible human experience.
Your energy matters, your growth matters, and you matter. Let's shift boldly,
joyfully,
together. Delphine, welcome to SoulShift. We're so happy you chose to be here.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. And I really feel this topic is really close to my heart because it speaks to the deeper wisdom that lives within all of us, whether we know it or not, right? It's there for us to access. And having the opportunity to hear you teach in the past, I love how you bring such clarity and grounded wisdom to something as vast as this topic of 5D consciousness. And, you know, a lot of our listeners are striving to learn how to shift in this way. And it leads me to my first question. If you're a newcomer to this world, how would you describe what life in 5D really means? And in a way that feels approachable for someone beginning to explore it.
What a great question. Thank you so much, Christine. You know, people often think of consciousness as something that's it's out there or something that they have to try to get to or achieve. And it's really not that at all. It's actually something in here. It's something that we all have access to. 5D is actually our natural state of being. 5D is when our thoughts, feelings, and actions are aligned with love and integrity and unity. But we get pulled out of that when we get into a lot of the programming of our 3D world. There's a lot of negative energy that swirls around us, and it kind of pulls us out of our rhythm into kind of denser experiences. And we might describe those as feelings of duality, you know, us against them, scarcity, you know, I've got to strive because there's never enough, a sense of requiring control, that we somehow have to control our environment because if we don't, it's going to spin out of control and something bad is going to happen. And these are all programming that we've gotten into as part of the 3D reality, or what we like to call the Matrix, right? The movie The Matrix, they say, is more of a documentary than a fictional piece. And in the movie The Matrix, you see the guy in the cockpit, and then there's the one down on the ground, you know, fighting. Well, the 3D is the guy on the ground fighting, and the 5D is us up in the cockpit. And it's really a shift in perspective. It's a shift in consciousness to where we are kind of pulling ourselves up out of the negative traps that our life is programmed in and being more one with our authentic state, source, whatever that means to you, and the flow of life.
That's beautifully said. And I love that you make it so accessible, whereas a lot of practitioners, they don't want to demystify it, right? And you want the entire world to be able to rise up. And so I'm curious of when did you first begin to experience this shift yourself?
I've kind of been on my spiritual journey now since about 2020, when we were all home trying to figure out what the heck to do with ourselves. I really went down kind of a spiritual path and did a deep dive into really getting into daily meditation, studying different spiritual leaders and reading more on it. And what I started realizing is that the more I kind of dropped into my authentic self, the more I was like, what's important to me? How do I practice more self-love? How do I not worry so much about what's going on the outside world and just really pay attention to what's going on in here? The more my life started just going into this beautiful flow. And I had a trip recently that was such a perfect example of it. I went to Europe with some girlfriends and we were traveling, and I actually went by myself. I met up with girlfriends along the way, but I was actually traveling by myself. And I got to tell you guys that every step of the way, I would meet these people that all of a sudden they would say something and it would be like, that's just the message I wanted to hear. Or I'd walk into an event and I would connect with the exact kind of person that I was needing. In this case, it was Zach Bush. I'm a huge fan of Zach Bush. I mean, he's probably up on like top 5 people if you could, meet anybody, it would be for me. And my girlfriend sends me a message. It's just like, did you know that Zach Bush is going to be in Amsterdam the exact same week you are? And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I looked and I bought the ticket and I got a VIP ticket to where I got to be on the front row with a meet and greet. And I get there and I'm thinking, okay, maybe there'll be a line or no. It was like 10 people in a room with Zach. And he was sitting 2 doors down. And I'm like, okay, this is like literally like pinch me now. I can't even believe I'm having this experience. He gave me the biggest hug. And then one of those Zach Bush hugs that go on really a long time. I'd heard about him and I actually got to witness it myself. And then we went around the room, we got to ask a question and I raised my hand and he said, Delphine. And I'm like, Zach Bush knows my name. It was the most beautiful event. And then I found out that he was actually there to be a speaker at another event, the Mind Valley Conference, which is what I was there for. So girls, I was front row center for that speaking event. And he was unbelievable. And as he left the stage, and I was just like watching him, I'm like, I have to at least go say hello one more time. And I walked over and he looked up at me and he said, Delphine, so good to see you. And he stepped around and he gave me another hug. And don't ask me where this came from. I said, is there any chance that you're free for lunch? And he goes, yeah, I am. You guys, 1 hour later, I'm sitting having lunch with Zach Bush. Like, seriously? But here's the crazy thing. I wasn't so blown away by the fact that I was sitting across from one of the people that has been so inspirational to me in my life. I was so blown away by the fact that I knew I had drawn that in. I knew that I had drawn that experience to myself, because when you live in your flow state, when you live your authentic self, when you live from a place where you just know all things are possible, the world, the universe delivers to you. And that's what you get. From that point forward, I was flying home and I thought, you know what? That's it. I have got to write this book about life in 5D, because this is the life I am now living, and it was not that difficult to get there. And I want to share this experience with more people so that everybody can live a life in 5D.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's a perfect example that you doing it in real time. And I love how you talked about the love and the fear piece in terms of, I don't know if you actually asked the question, but asking, am I about to take this action out of love or out of fear or ego, right?
Absolutely.
And when we choose love every time, that 5D world keeps flowing, right?
That's so true, Christine. And I actually even go a step beyond that. And anytime I have to make a decision, I ask myself, which option is most loving to me? I think a lot of times, especially as women, we are so programmed to be concerned about our partner, to be concerned about our children, to be concerned about our parents. We're always raised with this idea that we need to put everybody's needs above our own. And the reality of it is, what I've learned is that when you are acting from a place of self-love, you are doing the right thing for everybody around you. Because let's just take our kids, for instance. I don't know if you ladies have children, but I have 2 grown sons. And when I started acting from a place of love, I started drawing boundaries where I needed to draw my boundaries. I started being present and listening and not always feeling like I needed to jump in and solve their problem from them. And what they said is, Mom, I see a difference in you. I feel a difference in you. And they started kind of being more open to coming to me with their life experiences because they weren't worried that I was going to immediately try to solve it, immediately overgive, immediately, and it really just, my relationship with my kids just took another level. And I thought, isn't that funny? Because I would have argued that me not always putting myself first was what I was doing for them. And actually, in essence, doing that strengthened not only my relationship with my children, but with everybody around me.
That's beautiful.
Truly is, really is. I have to just share that while you're speaking, I so related to my own transformation, how I reframed my own connection to what I was told I needed to have to a higher power, to the connection to my deepest sense of self. And that for me created the flow that I imagine you are speaking of. And as you shared about your sons, I have 2 grown daughters, and being in this state allowed me to approach them from a place of curiosity rather than judgment, to have the uncomfortable conversations that you need to have when you're setting boundaries. So I thank you for articulating all this and helping me feel like it's possible. I really appreciate that. But what I'd love for you to explain to our listeners is, how can they recognize when they're in that flow?
You actually have no question about it. Because when you are in flow state, your life feels like it's in flow state. It's the difference of flowing downstream or swimming upstream. If you're feeling like you are struggling to retain control, if you're gripping, if you are in a fear-based mindset, these are the shadows of what the 3-dimensional matrix look like. When you shift into a higher consciousness or a higher 5th-dimensional consciousness, life feels easy.
Mm-hmm.
Your shoulders drop. You feel that you are one with the earth, one with people. You're not feeling like you're in opposition to anybody or anything. You feel like you are one with everything. And I really like to explain the difference between manifestation and 5D flow because, I love the fact that people are now focusing on the fact that they can attract into the life what they want based upon their thoughts, feelings, and actions. And I think manifestation movement has done a lot to make us more present. But one of the things that I feel is a disconnect is people are looking at it like a one-off. I'm going to manifest this one experience, and I'm going to do this one action and do this one ritual and say these things, and then I'm going to manifest this one experience. Whereas 5D flow is when you shift into a higher state of consciousness, everything that is meant for you just starts flowing towards you. Whatever is in alignment with your thoughts, beliefs, and actions is going to come to you. And you don't have to worry about being very specific, because oftentimes we might be trying to manifest something that is not even our highest, best good. For instance, my girlfriend said to me yesterday, I'm trying for this job and I got rejected and I'm not usually getting it, but I just have to understand that, I got rejected. And I said, honey, why are you looking at it like rejected? Because the universe may have a much bigger, bolder plan for you. And all it's doing is clearing away the path so that you can get to the big, better plan that the universe has for you. We often will fixate on something that we think is our biggest, best version, but our version is so narrow, it's so limited. Source has a much bigger plan for us. It has a much broader perspective than we have. And so as long as you just know that you are in flow state and whatever is meant for you is going to flow to you, it feels so much more expansive. It feels so much more loving of yourself to not have to focus on, again, I'm calling in this one manifestation thing. And I always say the difference is, instead of focusing on the experience or the activity, focus on what the feeling is. What's the feeling that you want? If somebody said, oh, I want this exact job. Well, is it because you want to feel fulfilled in your career? Is it that you want to feel abundant and that all of your needs are taken care of? Then focus on that feeling and allow the universe to figure out what are the steps that are going to get you there. And I feel like that is one of the major differences. How you know you're operating in 5D is when you stop trying to control all of the mechanisms and the steps along the way. And I always love it because, it's the whole Jesus take the wheel idea. When you can just take your hands off the wheel and just focus on the vision of the experience that you want to have in life. I want to feel loved. I want to feel safe. I want to feel productive. I want to feel like I am in flow. And I just know, as long as I keep my self-love in check, as long as I know that I am connecting on a daily basis to the practices that allow me to be in that higher state of flow, then everything that's meant for me is going to flow to me. And that is so powerful, because talk about dropping your shoulders when you don't feel like you have to carry the weight of the world.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is truly a blessing. It's a blessing to be willing to receive that. But let's talk about the common patterns that keep people anchored in 3D thinking. And I'd like to maybe reframe that to 3D being. Women who are so tied to their stories, so tied to their identity. And that's where they're focused. I hear people, especially clients of mine, saying, well, this is how it's been. This is who I am. And wouldn't you agree that that is really keeping them stuck in that 3D thinking, and also believing that they need to be in control? They have to control the outcome of their lives.
Oh my gosh, we're touching on all the good stuff today. Absolutely right. One of the limiting beliefs that we have, and it's a very popular limiting belief of the conditioning, the programming that we're into, is that we are this finite being, this solid mass, the solid matter, and that's the way I am, and that's the way my family is, and that's the way my religion is, and that's the way my heritage is. And we come up with this story about all the ways that we are being limited, when the reality is we are infinite beings. We have infinite energy. And when you tap into that 5D flow, you are not only pulling from the resources of your own energy, you're pulling from the resources in the energy of the universe. You have everything you need at your disposal. And so you gotta just let go of all of those confining, limiting beliefs that are telling and holding you small and keeping you down. You are as big as your imagination. You are as big as your contemplation. Whatever you can conceive of, you can achieve. And we've heard that, but it's really about embodying that and actually owning that and understanding that that is the case. Because the other route is limiting and it's painful. And we don't need that. And we already know our cells turn over. You are an entirely different person every 2 years. Every single cell in your body, some many times in that time frame. But they said every single cell in your body is different within 2 years. So if there's anything that you're holding on to, it's because you're choosing to. Talk about some powerful thinking going behind that one, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Practice is important. Dropping into understanding where we want to be, being consistent with that. And our imagination is our friend. We've been kind of taught to, oh, that's just imagination. Imagination is our tool that gets us to where we need to be, where we want to be. So being able to envision, imagine what that higher, best version self is, and then consistently revisiting that self in your mind and your emotions and your heart, and then taking action that's aligned with that biggest, best version of yourself, that's our path. That's our path, and that's how we get out of it. And so if you start falling into that negative thinking, that, my mom would call it stinking thinking, when you start dropping into that stinking thinking, you got to drop into your practice, whether it's taking a couple deep breaths, closing your eyes, re-envisioning where you're going, resetting your energy field, your frequency, and then you're off on your way again. And we do something, we have an online community called Harmoneum, harmoneum.com. And what we do is an 1111 frequency shift every day where we all get together. I lead the group through a little frequency shift, a little mini meditation where we reset our energy, and we do it as a group. And there's something so powerful about coming together as a group because it's exponential, the energy, when we're together as a group, right? So we do this every day at 11:11. It takes about 7 minutes. We all just shift our frequency together, and it's really bonded the group. We really come together as quite like a family. So I believe in it.
Beautiful explanation. I thank you. I think I'm going to make this podcast episode homework assignment for the women that I coach. So I thank you so very much for that.
Absolutely.
I love that, Mindy. It's a great homework assignment. And Delphine, I was looking at your website, harmonium.com, and I saw the 1111. I was like, that is such a cool practice. And it's so cool that there's actually a time associated with it so you get it done instead of putting it off. And what I wanted to ask you is, I work with a lot of women who have very full plates, as we all do, right? I mean, we're all very busy and have a lot of things on our to-do list. So I'm wondering, what are the daily practices that someone can bring into their life to help shift into that higher frequency? And then maybe more importantly, stay in that higher frequency instead of, doing the 1111 and bouncing right back out of it. How do we just stay in this place of letting go and our shoulders staying down?
Oh my gosh, Ellie, you hit the jackpot with that question. This month in Harmonium, every month we have a new theme. And this past month of October has been the power of practice.
Oh.
And it was just a full masterclass of reminding us of the importance of the repetition of our habits, of practicing what we preach. And I'm going to start by addressing the "we're so busy" thing. One of the things that we do, especially as women, is we fill our day with tasks that are required, and many of us are not really focused on serving ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with saying, make taking care of yourself your number one priority, because everything will go better if you make yourself your number one priority. And then do that by actually scheduling in time for yourself. So the 1111 frequency shift, who doesn't have 7 minutes that they can't put things on pause? And we record them, so if they can't join us, they can still go back and catch it. It is true that having habits that are constantly building our frequency, building our resilience is super important, because when we need it the most are in times of challenge, in times of chaos. So you've got to practice your resilience, your grounding, your wholeness at a time when you're not feeling challenged, so that you have to pull that from that reservoir when you are feeling challenged. So that's what we do. And, I don't think there's another way around it. Meditation is so important in our life. And, I've heard it. I'm sure you guys have all heard it. I've tried. My mind's so busy, I can't meditate. That's like getting out on the tennis court and whiffing a couple balls and saying you can't play tennis. Well, you might just need to practice a little bit, right? I think we can all meditate. We can all be mindful, but it might take a little bit of practice. So if you set a few minutes aside, I say first thing in the morning, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is my big mentor for meditation, he says, get up at 5 a.m. Nobody's looking for you at 5 a.m. That phone's not buzzing. Nobody's texting you. And if they are, they shouldn't be. And when you are doing it at a time when you are not having anything else to do, that helps a lot, just finding that little quiet time. So what I typically do is I get up and I sit up in my bed and I put the pillows under my knees and I just drop into my meditation. And what I do is I try to just fill my heart with the sense of love. I imagine golden white light. I imagine it pouring in through my crown, coming from heaven and filling up into my chest. And I just breathe it in and I try to just feel centered in that peace. And that's all it really is required. Of course, you can do guided meditations, you can get into mantras, you can get into chanting. There's so many other things that you can do in your meditation. But even if you just spent 5 minutes feeling centered with your brain right here, present with you, not checking to-do lists, not worrying about anything else, just present, quiet, still for a moment, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe even 15 minutes if you get real jiggy with it, and see what a change happens in your life. Because I'm going to suggest that maybe your entire day is going to flow smoother. Maybe all of those conversations that you're going to have that might have been a little bit challenging are going to go just a little bit smoother. And Christian, one of our coaches in Harmoneum, was our guest coach this past week, and he is a former monk. He was a monk for 10 years. And he mentioned in his thing that they would set alarms. He said he would set an alarm on an hourly basis to go off, and just as a reminder, and when that alarm would go off, he would settle in and just become present to his day again. I thought, I mean, even the monks using technology to remind us. There's no reason that we can't figure this out. Absolutely, if you have a will, there's a way.
It's really beautiful that you're making it so accessible. And I've learned through ancient healing modalities that if we do whatever we're choosing to do to connect with self on the same time, on the same day, your physiology is going to remember, it's going to shift, and it actually starts changing how our organs are responding, how literally every cell in our body responds simply by thinking how you are, just embodying that feeling of love. That's it. So I love that it's so simple that you're sharing with our audience, because it doesn't have to be 20 minutes, an hour sitting in a cave, right? A lot of people don't think they can do it, and it's just misinformation, right? Or limiting belief,
I started meditating because I got invited to a challenge. It was an app called Insight Timer, which is a beautiful app if somebody's looking to learn how to meditate. And it was a 20-day challenge or a 30-day challenge. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, do you want to do something?" I'm like, okay. And if I commit to something, I really try to follow through. So that was my first experience of it. And I think the meditations were like 10 to 15 minutes long. And I did it every day. And by the end of the month, I was like, I think I feel better than I've ever felt. I felt like a weight had kind of been lifted off of me. I felt like my life was flowing smoother. I actually felt so proud of myself that I was consistent with it, and I could see that I had gotten better over the time frame. So we all just need to start somewhere, and we need to have faith in ourselves that we can do it. And, community is just so good, which is actually why I started Harmoneum, is because I had so many people reach out to me. I am a life coach and I ran retreats, and we'd always do the 1-week follow-up call after the retreats. And I'd hear the same thing over and over, like, "Oh, I tried to do, I got 3 days of practice and then I couldn't. And then my kids and my husband's laughing at me and I don't know anybody else that's doing this. I feel like I'm just out there on my own." And I was like, okay, we need a community here that people can feel supported. And so that's what Harmonium is about. And that's where we started from. And so if people are feeling like they need a little more support, know that that is available to you. But it does take a little bit of gumption, if you got to set your timer or your watch to remind yourself to get into that repetition, it's worth it because it pays off in the end, for sure.
And what I love about this is the reminder that the concept of living in 5D is not about escaping life. It's about embracing it and feeling embodied. And of course, bringing love with you.
Yes. That is such a good point. We often try to make things more difficult than they need to be. We are incredible infinite beings. We have so much more power than we give ourselves. And we allow ourselves to get distracted by all of the heavier forces. But it's really about just centering ourselves, feeling our authentic self, being our authentic self, giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves, to love ourselves, to slow down, to be present. And it's really just not that difficult. And it really is not about going out there. It really is about coming in here. And it's really a place that we all want to be, because oftentimes when we think about what we're trying to get out there, there's a book called Inside Out Revolution, and I highly recommend this. It's a life-changing book, and it's a very short book. It reminds us that everything that we want to feel good, we're looking out here for it. I'm looking for validation. I'm looking for abundance. I'm looking for happy, and everything is out here. And so you say, okay, well, what if you got that? Well, then what's going to happen? Oh, well, if they recognize me in the meeting and say I did good, then I'm going to feel like they like me and I'm going to like myself. Well, how about just starting with liking yourself?
Yeah.
Well, if I had all this abundance, then I will be able to live this beautiful life in this beautiful home, and then I'm going to feel at peace. Well, how about just starting with feeling at peace? And then once you create those emotions inside, the universe reflects it, and then you attract all those things. And it is the easiest method for getting everything that we want in life is by starting feeling it right in here first.
And then what happens is you eventually forget to suffer.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pain is part of life. Suffering's an option.
Exactly. Delphine, you've already shared with our audience how they can find you, harmoneum.com. You have any sessions, upcoming workshops? Where can they start their journey into 5D living?
Well, I have just the right thing. Well, there's two things. And if we have an opportunity, I have a little chart that I give to all of my clients, and we use it a lot in Harmoneum. And that is just a frequency chart that shows you all of the things that raise your frequency and all of the things that lower your frequency. And so we kind of do a little challenge, like how many things on the raise the frequency chart can we do in one day, and then how many things can we avoid? So the things that you want to avoid are junk food, screens. It's so funny. My life is so not on that side these days. I can barely even think of them. The other parts are hydration, sunlight, movement, laughter. And you just try to see how many you can get on the raise your frequency side. So I do have that little chart that I would love to share with your viewers. And the other thing is we've created a little quiz. It says, where are you on your ascension path? And so if you go to harmoneum.com, right on the front page, there's a little thing that says take the quiz. You can click on it, take the quiz, and it'll ask you questions about your lifestyle, about where you are, about your perspective, and it'll kind of give you a guide on where you are on your level of ascension within some tips on how to get to the next level.
That's great. And then if you could give us the link to that chart, we can include it in the show notes.
Yes. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you. And I'd love to share as one of the coaches, it's an honor to be a coach on Harmoneum because I've seen firsthand, front of the scene, behind the scenes.
Yes. And Christine's going to be guest coaching coming up this month, and we're so excited. Woohoo!
That's right. Thank you. And I have to say, anyone listening, please go to harmonium.com. It's a whole nother level of living. Obviously, we know 5D, right? But it just you feel so wonderful inside when you leave, and it stays with you throughout the day. And this is something we can access on a daily basis. And the guests, I have to say, that Delphine brings in, unbelievable in terms of, as she shared, Christian was a monk for 10 years. I mean, the wealth of knowledge being shared I can see this is going to be a worldwide community. And I feel like it is essential.
Oh my gosh, Mimi, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And as we wrap it up, we love to end with this reflection. And it could either be, we like to give a choice here. Either what does soul shift mean to you personally in your current season of life? Or what do you think it would mean for someone who's just beginning to awaken to this path?
I love that. I love that. Well, it's funny because we call our 1111s frequency shifts. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. really every shift that we do is a shift in perspective. It's a shift in energy and a shift in perspective, because we already came into this planet completely whole and with everything that we need. So all we need to do is remember that. It's a remembrance. It's a remembrance of how powerful we are. It's a remembrance of how infinite we are. And it's a remembrance of how connected we are. And I actually don't know that it's much of a difference between just starting out or if you've been on this path for a long time, because the mode is still the same. It's about constantly coming back to self. It's about self-love, and it's about unity consciousness, understanding that we are all one and that only way we can rise is together as one. And it's throwing aside judgment, understanding that we are all on our path. We're all versions of each other, just in a different perspective on a different place on our path. But that understanding that we are already here and all we have to do is just remember and tap into our inner frequency, our inner abilities, our inner connectedness. And from there, it's all good.
Well, thank you, Delphine. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your light, and your heart with us today. I feel like you've given us such a grounded understanding of what it means to live in flow in a practical way, and how to practice daily presence and just truly embody unity like as our true selves. And listeners, thank you for being with us. You know, you might be walking your dog, making your tea, taking a quiet moment for yourself, but we're just really honored that you chose to be here and visit with Delphine and the three of us. You'll find Delphine's links and resources in the show notes, and including ways that you can connect with her on Harmoneum and to join that community. Her work through Harmoneum, as I shared, it continues to inspire countless people to expand their consciousness and deepen their connection with love and alignment. And I feel that this is just so needed in the world today. And it's been just such a joy to share this energy with. And as always, we're always here to shift gently with intention together. Cheers. Thank you for sharing this sacred time today.
We hope something in this conversation touched your heart
and offered nourishment for your soul's journey.
Remember, transformation is most effortless when it happens one tender shift at a time.
Until next week, we invite you to carry one insight from today into your life.
Not as a task.
Think of it as a superpower to yourself.
If something resonated, we'd love to hear from you. If you're joining us on YouTube, feel free to leave us a comment below.
Your words ripple outward, offering connection and comfort to others walking this path beside you.
If SoulShift feels like home, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review.
Your support will help us reach more hearts that need to hear they're not alone.
We're holding you in love, so know you're not alone. Your journey matters.
May your heart be filled,
and may your path be filled with grace.